Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us in wherever you're watching from today in the social media world. This is a first for us here because we're talking with Marilyn Gladu, our MP, and thank you so much for being here today, Marilyn.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, I appreciate the time because there's a lot of people always after your time, I know, and so this is a kind of a special day that this conversation we're going to have today. There's a lot of information that Marilyn's going to share with us, and if you're watching on Facebook, you can share your comments and questions, and Marilyn will be happy to talk to you about that. And we're not on any kind of time constraint here, so we'll just talk about what we're here for, and we'll have some fun too, because I know you like to have fun.
And lucky for you, the house is just adjourned, so you're the first one in the queue, so you have my time for as long as you
That's
need.
fantastic, because you're really busy, you know. I'm not sure if everybody realizes you're about 3 out of 4 weeks of the month you're away.
Right, 3 out of 4 weeks in Ottawa, and then when you come back, really, there are a lot of events in the constituency, and everyone wants to have their say, so
Yeah.
I try to make as much time as I can for everyone.
Yeah, and you do very well at it because, you know, you're seen a lot in the community and active in different events. And I know you and I enjoyed each other in Dancing with the Stars.
Absolutely, I think you definitely were the superior dancer of the two.
Well, I don't
but,
know.
It was a great experience, good fundraiser for the community.
It was
and
the
a good
Alzheimer's
cause.
Society, and I know they're going to be doing it again. I know it was a great learning experience for me because I just didn't think I was going to get through it all, but we did.
I did great.
So you talk parliamentary session has ended for now, and that's why you're back. And so what happens when that ends? How does your routine change? And obviously you got to keep yourself busy.
Well, exactly. So, I mean, it was good to complete a few things at the end of the parliamentary session. We've got a number of bills that would be important for Sarnia-Lambton. I know the boaters will be caring about the one that when they cross that imaginary line in the St. Clair
Yeah.
or in Lake Huron, they are not going to have to notify CBSA.
Oh, okay.
So that should get royal assent in July, and I'll announce as soon as it's firmly in law. But that's a great piece of news. Obviously, the normal parliamentary business of getting the budget passed and all those sort of things happen. Indirectly, that affects us because where there are programs that have funding, we want to get that for Sarnia-Lambton.
Sure.
So that, and then Wilma McNeil, who is an icon in the community, who's
Yeah.
been advocating for Remembrance Day for
Yes.
about 27 years. She'll be happy that the bill that was brought forward by Colin Fraser got passed and is in the Senate now for consideration to make Remembrance Day a holiday.
Wow, she's got to be thrilled for that because I know I've met her a couple of times, and she's 27 years she's been working on that.
She has advocated. This bill has come provincially and federally multiple times, but in this particular instance, it was picked up, and of course it's to the provinces to decide whether the day will actually be a holiday. Some provinces already have it as a holiday.
I got to ask the question because I know, and I'm going to reveal my age a bit, but back in the 80s when I was in high school and even public school, I mean, Remembrance Day was, and still is, a super important day. And you know, as years pass, I almost, you know, our children, do they get further away from Remembrance Day? Is it, 27 years, why should that be so hard? It just seems to me like a no-brainer that this would be a holiday, at least for the people that were involved, you know, our vets. What's the problem?
Well, the concern from some of the military organizations, especially the Royal Canadian Legion, is they want to maintain that focus that you had in school, where, you know, the kids are constantly reminded about the sacrifice that veterans have made, and they're worried that if it becomes a holiday that people just will take the day off or you know, go shopping, that they won't go to the cenotaph. Now the provinces where it has been made into a holiday, they found that over time people additionally have things in the schools. It becomes sort of a remembrance week like it is here. We have 11 ceremonies here over the week, and so they have the same. They make sure that the schools do on a school day get Remembrance Day, and then people can go with their families to the cenotaph on the actual day.
Yeah. Sarnia seems to be a very remembering community, though, would you say?
We're a strong military community. We've obviously had sacrifices in every world war, and the most recent memorial put up in Veterans Park is just another example of how we don't forget that we stand with our military, and that the members of the community are very concerned to remember. There was a huge turnout this year at Remembrance Day at Veterans Park. They were spilling out all the way down Wellington to Christina.
Yeah, fantastic. You know, with the end of parliamentary session, there was another special day that you were able to be a part of, and that would be Solidarity Day. or is that the right term?
Well, currently called a National Aboriginals Day, and I think it will be changed next year to be National Indigenous Peoples Day.
Okay.
But this is the day where we're recognizing First Nations, Métis, Inuit, all of the First Peoples of Canada, and so it was a very moving ceremony and huge attendance, obviously, on the Hill. We all want to see a healing of the relationship, I would say. Here in Sarnia, we're lucky we have good relationship, but that's not the same case across the country.
Right. And yet, that being said, I'm glad you're to that point of our relationships locally here. And they were fantastic fireworks down here, I have to say. I wasn't there, but I could see them from where we live. What do you think has to happen? I mean, there's a lot of emotion involved, and I think in different interviews I've always talked about one of the problems we have is emotion in things. Yet at the same time, we got to keep some emotion in there because we're human and we're real. What do you think needs to happen, or what's the toughest part about overcoming? Is it racial issues? Is it heritage issues? What do you think is the biggest obstacle in our relationships?
I think it's communicating and listening. I think what we've done well here in the community when we have changes that are coming is that we have stakeholder meetings, and we meet with our First Nation, whether it's Anjanawn or whatever, and really understand the concerns and take action to address the concerns. Yeah. And I think if we look in the broader context in the country, that's what we need as well. We have very complicated situations. We have a lot of treaties that have not been honored. There are things that do have to be, I think, set right. And then there are actions that have to be taken, not just words. So we see a lot of words from this government, but I think there's frustration on everyone's part that we're not seeing as much action as we would have anticipated.
Yeah. And, I think, and this is just my opinion, but I think sometimes we, the people, the community, we rely too much on our politicians to solve everything for us, and what are you going to do for me? And I always go back to that one president that said, ask not. What can people do in a community to participate and assist in whatever it is that needs to be accomplished? And we'll use what we're just talking about, with our Native friends. What can me, Mr. Community, do to help with that? Well,
I think let's start by getting to know one another. Go to the powwows. Participate in events where they're focusing on Aboriginal issues so that we can understand what the issues are. And then those who have the ability to act need to take action. So I think we've seen some great initiatives. Wheels to Lambton is one of my favorite initiatives, where they recognize that one of the key ways of bringing people out of poverty is to provide an education. But how to get transportation from the different reserves is a real problem. And so coming with a practical solution of, hey, let's get a van, let's get a bus, let's drive people back and forth. And I think all of the community members came alongside then and supported with the money. And now you've got a program where you're seeing graduates and you're seeing, that interrelationship get stronger.
Yeah. And I notice here in Sarnia Lambton, I see it's different events that both our communities are inviting to each other, like you say, to the powwows. I hear it on our radio station. Please come out, and Solidarity Day celebrations, and coming to our Canada Day, and I guess it's really about relationships, right? And just like you and I would have a relationship, we just have to work on it and build on it. Yep. And I guess there's a lot of repairing that has to be done.
Well, there is repairing that has to be done because there are a lot of wrongs that have been done. Yeah. And so I think the path forward is good. I have a lot of respect when we see the events at Lambton College always start with a recognition of the importance of the relationship and the graciousness that they have allowed us to be on their lands.
And they just had a celebration, was it 25 years with Lambton College?
50 years.
50
Lambton
years,
College.
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah.
50-year anniversary on our sesquicentennial.
That's fantastic. Well, we're going to just check out into social media here a bit. I don't know if we have anything out there. My son Jason's in the background. He's our producer-director today, but we'll see what we've got here. Pardon me, Marilyn, while I...
No, it's okay. While you do that, I'll just tell people that there's a lot of Canada 150 celebrations going on, and I would just encourage them to come out to the parades on July the 1st in Canatera Park at 11, or out in Petrolia at 1, or down in Moortown at 3.
Keep stalling.
There's one in Brights Grove this weekend, tomorrow in fact, that starts at 11 o'clock. And I am having a barbecue on July the 13th in Petrolia at the Farmers Market at 4 o'clock. So
barbecue
for Canada 150.
That's awesome. There is a lot going on, and I know it's starting early. And actually, I'll put it out there this year. I'll be live streaming the parade again for the second time. So we're excited for that. So we've got lots of viewers, but nobody's commenting there yet. So maybe they're just waiting for the right moment.
They're waiting for the tricky issue. So bring it.
What? This is a really exciting topic here, this private members bill that you brought forward in supporting of palliative care. But let's talk about why this is extra special, because this is just being read into the Senate. It's gone through a lot of processes to get to where it's at right now. But this type of bill typically gets shut down very early. It doesn't get near passing, let alone passing. And you're the opposition, so look at the smile. I mean, you've got to be feeling pretty good about this. So
as a rookie, I do feel really good. I'll give you some statistics. Apparently, in 100 years, there have been 278 private members' bills that have ever been passed.
Wow.
So, that's not that many. And for me to be in opposition, that's an even smaller percentage.
Yeah.
So I think it just points out that there's a great need for palliative care. 70% of Canadians have nothing, no palliative care at all. Yeah. And with 1 in 6 seniors in the country, I think it's a growing need. With the assisted dying legislation, I think countries have shown that people that have palliative care, they choose to live as well as they can, as long as they can. Yeah. And we're fortunate here in Sarnia-Lambton. I thought everyone had what we have, but that's not the case.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit of the specifics of this bill, so people understand. I know palliative care, obviously, but what does this include, and how is this going to benefit the Canadian people?
Well, this bill comes with a framework to define across the country what services are going to be covered.
Right.
So right now, for example, hospice care is only 43% covered in Ontario.
Sorry, when you say covered, you're talking under OHIP?
I'm talking about the government medical transfers to the provinces, and then the provinces will pay. So hospice care is only 43% funded. Care in hospital is, but home care is not always covered. And there are spiritual and emotional counseling services that are not always covered. So this will define what services the government will pay for and what training is required at the different level of service provision. So we're short about 400 palliative care specialists in the country. A lot of the nurses that graduate receive no training in palliative care. And with it being such an epidemic need, that's important. As we come to trying to figure out what is the plan to get consistent access for the whole country, especially in rural and remote regions, we're going to need to take a different view. Use paramedics, home care, sometimes personal members of the family that would receive training and would be connected to 24/7 virtual palliative care centers that exist now in Winnipeg, and there's a number of them. In order to get that care out to the rural and remote places. Right. And finally, this bill will collect some data and do research, because we don't even know what is the need, how much does it cost on average for palliative care, so we need some of that information. And then to evaluate putting back in place a secretariat for palliative care. This would be a person in the government who would drive that plan forward and make sure that the focus is maintained.
Okay. So I guess I have to ask the obvious question into all of this, and it's money. Where is this coming from? And what about the Liberal government? Is there any concerns there about, will this, what am I trying to say? Sometimes support is put out there, and then when it comes to crunch time, it doesn't exactly go the way. Is there any concerns about how much will be allotted? I think I heard something about rural coverage.
Yes, well, I would tell you that in the beginning, when I brought this members bill forward, I didn't actually think the government would support it. I was using it to drive them to action. I thought it would shame them into bringing their own bill.
Why wouldn't they support this? I mean,
it
sounds like another
It's an opposition members bill. Not that they wouldn't like the topic, but by the time it came forward and got the input, there were so many national groups that were in support of it that the health minister and her parliamentary secretary said, wow, this is a really good bill. I think with some amendments we could support it. And then before it's even passed into law, the health minister in Budget 2017 announced $11 billion for home care, palliative care, and mental health care.
Wow.
So, before it's even passed into law, they're already taking the kind of actions that we've recommended, and I would expect that'll continue.
Okay, well, that's great, and congratulations on the success of this. Um, there's still lots we can talk about. Is there anything else you want to talk about on that bill before we move on?
Just to say that I'm really pleased. You know, this is something where you always wonder if one person can make a difference in Parliament. And so in my year and a half that I've been there so far, I feel very proud of that. I think millions of lives will be saved through that.
Good for you. Congratulations. Now, I didn't bring this up to you as something I wanted to talk about, so I don't mean to surprise you on this, but before we move on to some other things, can we talk about the M word? Marijuana.
Marijuana. Oh yes, yes. There's a lot of M words.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And the reason I did is I saw something. I think it was on your Facebook page.
Oh
and,
yes.
And toasters were involved. Do you have any regret of that example, or
not really? You know, I think
I don't think you should.
I'll tell you a little bit of the background because it's kind of entertaining. So the Justice Minister was making these statements that this legislation will keep marijuana out of the hands of children. But the reality is that they're allowing 4 pot plants up to 3 meters high in everyone's household, which of course puts it right into the hands of children. And 12 to 17-year-olds can have up to 5 grams with no consequence. So there's a lot of hypocrisy.
Age 12 to 17?
Age 12 to 17 can possess up to 5 grams, which as I understand is 10 joints, without any consequence. And so there's a real concern that this is not what people thought they were signing up for. What they wanted was for people that were adults to be able to smoke marijuana without a criminal charge. That's really what they wanted.
I mean, we don't even let teenagers buy cigarettes.
Well, okay, exactly.
Sorry,
and so this is where things got fired up. And so I had brought these facts forward, and then at one point I said, Mr. Speaker, the Justice Minister keeps saying that this will keep marijuana out of the hands of our children. You know, there are 4 pot plants in every house. Little Johnny can pick a leaf, stick it in the toaster oven, and smoke it up. And all of a sudden, I'm getting hated from coast to coast by the young demographic. Now, this is the fun part. When I was at university, people used to grow marijuana in their closets with hydroponics and lights. And they would dry the leaves on the toaster oven with the little stainless steel dish underneath it to catch the parts, and then they would roll up their cigarettes. This is what I observed when I was at university. Apparently that is not the way it's done anymore. Now they hang up their leaves, apparently with clothespins.
Okay, there's a new process.
There's a new process, but the youth were saying, you are, a moron because you know nothing. Nobody smokes pot this way.
So you don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know what you're talking about. And I was really confused, but I had a lot of laughs from the older people that said, yeah, they do it differently now. So
and really, that wasn't even the point, right?
It wasn't
the point of how you do it. I mean, and you were, I watched the video. I mean, you're emotional when you speak, so you got a little fired up there.
I was fired up,
And so, but you weren't talking about the process.
But they turned it into a meme.
You're talking about the fact that it's going to have access to our children, and not to say that they don't already. I'm not going to, if you read the stats. But aren't we talking about a lead by example situation too as a parent? I mean, if I'm really going to stir it up here now because lots of people smoke pot. Let's just put it what it is. Do they smoke in front of their children? I'm an ex-cigarette smoker. I, for the longest time, didn't smoke in front of my children. And now that I'm an ex-smoker, I'm even worse about it. But lead by example. And I guess we've gotten to the times where smoking marijuana is accepted in our society, obviously.
Well, I think, people just have to make sure we're not going to get unintended consequences. Because while, you're right, there are a lot of people that are smoking it. The places that have legalized it have seen a 32% increase in impaired drug driving. And we're not equipped at this point with any kind of test to
How do you know that I was smoking that?
Well, they can do a saliva test and tell that you smoked, but they can't tell whether you're impaired or not. They can't tell whether you smoked in the last 24 hours. So there is some difficulty there.
And what are my rights? Are they that's got to be another? What are my rights?
So what are your rights?
Person?
Well, they set a 0 tolerance, or they'll be in contention all the time. Then the other thing is the Medical Association has shown that there's a 30% increase in schizophrenia and psychotic disorders for people under 25 that smoke marijuana.
Right.
That's a very disturbing thing, especially if we consider how underfunded mental health care is. We don't want to aggravate that situation. And then starting it being a border town, here's really a difficult thing. Federally, they've said in the States, they're not going to legalize marijuana.
Right.
And we've already seen examples of where people have been prevented from entering the U.S. for confessing that they smoked marijuana.
Right.
Now, if you start to get a ticketed offense or anything that shows up here in Canada, it's possible you will not be able to travel to the U.S. And that would be a big concern for people that work in the States, people that want to go on vacation. And I don't think that any of these issues have been really dealt with in detail by the government.
So wouldn't it be fair to say from a logical standpoint, isn't there just like too many negative variables or too many negative attachments to this to put it through at all? Like, should
Well,
we,
there's
I mean,
been
can we
huge
talk we can
resistance.
talk alcohol. I mean, it's a drug, but
Yes.
it's legal. And some of us are better at it, and, you know, like, so.
But there's provincial laws. There's provincial laws that say as a minor that you can't buy it, you can't possess it.
Right.
Okay? Those laws aren't in place on marijuana.
Right.
Provinces are going to get this downloaded to them. The federal government has essentially said, we're going to set vague laws and let the provinces implement without any resources for the provinces. That's not good. The police forces are against this. And so everyone who's a stakeholder is saying, we need to slow down. We need to think about this and make sure we do it right, and that we don't create a fiasco where the government is just intent on ramming this in by July 1st of next year.
Yeah, and this is correct me if I'm wrong, this is the Liberals started this.
The Liberals, yeah, for
Right.
sure. And
Now, here's a question. Do you think that's why they got elected?
well, I've no doubt that the millennials that voted came out in many cases because of the marijuana issue. They probably split their vote. Some of them voted NDP, some of them voted Liberal. They both ran on a platform that was similar. And I understand that that is true.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much for that. Speaking of youth, or let's go back again to a minute to the palliative care, because there's something else there that I forgot to mention. Gran Fondo is coming back to Sarnia. Yay, that's fantastic. And I just actually interviewed Ken McAlpine, who's going to be on my show next week, who's a driving force in this Gran Fondo. And he's recruited you to be in the Gran Fondo. And I didn't know Marilyn is a cyclist. Let's talk about that too. But talk about why this is important, because this supports palliative care as well, right?
Absolutely. Well, Ken McAlpine is just a mastermind when it comes to organizing these events. But this event is like 750 cyclists that are raising the funds to put on a one-of-a-kind palliative care convention or seminar in Grand Bend. And this will have palliative care specialists from all over the world. I mean, this is a best-in-class event that's happening, and Ken is the pioneer. He's worked with Dr. Madison from our very own St. Joe's Hospice,
Yep.
and they are just bringing huge awareness to the issue and money along with it. So as a cyclist, I've been a cyclist for quite a number of years and a spin cycle instructor.
Yeah,
so,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
So
great
there's
way
a
to
side
keep
of Marilyn we didn't know.
Great way to keep in shape, and I just encourage people that want to come out. There's a 50K, 100K,
Yeah.
150K. So.
I think it's great. Ken tried to recruit me, and I asked if there was a 1K or a 5K, I might be able to, but no.
No,
So
well,
I'd have to work up to that.
You know, your medical doctors will tell you that you need to ease in gently and work
I
your
will
way
be
up.
there. Actually, we're going to be doing some live streaming of the event and promoting it as well. And I know Ken's really excited for the event as well.
Well,
He's
you
very
know what?
passionate
It's
about it.
amazing to see that this kind of support in communities all across the country and on palliative care, which we need so desperately.
Yeah. And the event, Ken was telling me too, that there's a lot of people that travel from very far to be here.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, wow, what a beautiful area this is. And they were even out in Brights Grove and all these areas, they were just overwhelmed by how beautiful our community is.
Well, you know that I've traveled globally in my 32 years of business, and I always maintain that this is a jewel, the best kept secret, because we have everything. And I'm so happy to be back here after the House adjourned. I'm just can't even tell you, I'm delighted.
Well, one of my friends, and you probably know him, David Noel from Investors Group, he goes away, and when he gets asked, where do you live? He says, I live on the Southwestern Ontario Riviera.
Yeah,
That's a great way. So maybe we can steal that tagline from him as well. And you have traveled a lot, and I'd like to go into just a little bit of background about you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Maybe people don't know Marilyn, the engineer. That's you were an engineer for how many years? And
32 years as an engineer. I was first with Dow Chemical for about 21 years globally in plastics. And then I was actually over about 254 plants around the world, flew around and did lots of good work there. And then I took a switch and went to Suncor and was eventually Director of Engineering and Construction when we built the $1 billion Genesis project. So that was a very interesting foray. And great exposure to our quality trades here in Sarnia. And then I went to Worley Parsons, and I was 9 years with them, business director for refining and chemicals in North America, doing deals with Nova Chemicals, Imperial Oil, Shell, all those kind of folks.
So how would you say that's helped you in your political career?
Well, certainly, I do have a global perspective. I understand large business and small business. I was a small business owner. I owned a chip truck here in Sarnia under the bridge. Yes, I did.
Okay.
Blue Water Bridge fries.
Right on.
And so I think I understand very well fiscal policy, how the world works, foreign policy, a lot about culture and organizational change, and as an engineer, efficiency and how to get things done.
Right.
And boy, could we ever use that in government.
No kidding. Thanks for sharing that. We do have some comments here from our Facebook. Travis Poland, thank you for watching, Travis. Travis Poland is recently joined the team at LambtonShield.com, and he wants to know, he says, hello, Dave and Marilyn, this is Travis Poland reporting.
Hi, Travis.
Shield. Yeah. Question about marijuana and young adults. How would you like the government to treat young adults 12 to 17 caught with small amounts of marijuana if the current framework is not sufficient? I guess we sort of touched on that a bit. But
I'm really not a fan of increasing the access of marijuana to small children in any way.
Right.
So I personally am opposed to having the 4 plants per household. You don't get quality control on the THC level. You don't get quality control on the exposure to kids. I'm not in favor of that.
Yeah.
I think allowing kids 12 to 17 to possess the drug, I mean, that's 10 to 15 joints. I can't believe that they're not going to smoke it if they've got it.
I'd be afraid to carry one.
You know, I think if they got it, they're going to smoke it. And these are the age group that's most at risk for increased schizophrenia, psychotic disorders. And I would tell you as a youth leader of 32 years, as much as people don't believe marijuana is a gateway drug, it's really the people you start hanging around with that eventually upsell you into other drugs.
Well,
and I do think that's a problem. We in Sarnia, we've got a huge drug problem. We don't need to add to it.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, talking to some people I know in law enforcement, their concerns are what it's laced with sometimes. And I guess kind of going to what your point, saying, where's the control? There's no knowing what's in there. Where are you buying it from? And it's not even who you're buying it from. You might know the person you're buying it from, but you don't know the person they're buying it. And it just seems like too much of an open door to a lot of problems.
Well, you may have seen today they were talking about how they may not have enough supply of marijuana if they go ahead with this.
Right.
It's important to note that they've lifted the visa requirement on Mexicans coming across, and there's evidence that the Mexican cartels are moving in anticipation of getting involved in a legalized marijuana business. So that's problematic.
Are we going to see this in vending machines at some point, do you think?
I hope not.
Know.
I really hope not.
Yeah.
Is this the most important issue we are dealing with in our country today?
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one for sure. Thanks for your time on that. But talking about youth, let's talk about this youth council initiative that you've brought out, and it sounds very exciting. Tell everybody what this is all about.
Sure. So the idea is that I want to hear from the youth in our community what they think is important, what they would like to see the government do, concerns that they have about their future. We get lots of opportunities to meet with seniors. I get lots of opportunities to meet with, you know, middle-aged folks. But really, I started to talk at high schools, and I thought that the kids would be totally disinterested in government. I was not really interested in government at that age. But I have found that this generation is actually impassioned about government.
Really?
And they have very strong ideas by issue, not by party, but by issue. And that they have a lot to say. So I want to hear what they have to say, and I want to see if I can bring those ideas representing Sarnia Lambton and the youth of Sarnia Lambton to government.
Right. So how does this work? How do they reach out to you, or is there going to be regular gatherings? Excuse me, or what's the plan?
The first kickoff will be on July the 19th. and we're going to get together for pizza and to talk about how we're going to move forward. Because really, it's up to the
pizza.
youth.
I'm in.
You know what? When it comes to youth, they're very social media. You know, that's how they connect, and they don't necessarily need to have a regular meeting. But if they want to have one, I'm open to that, and we'll just decide how are we going to communicate and. Are we going to communicate by issue? So as issues come up in the House and legislation is being debated, that I can get input from them, or do they want to have a more structured approach? I'm flexible. I just am really happy. We've had quite a number of youth come forward and volunteer to get involved, so I'm excited for that kickoff.
Oh, that's great. So if any youth watching want to reach out, how do they get in touch with you?
There's room for more. Just go to the webpage, www.marilyngladu.com, and there's a link right there that you can fill out the form and get involved.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll have to follow up with that and make sure. That sounds really exciting too. And you said that's July 19th.
July 19th is a kickoff.
Okay, very good. Let's get to some more stuff. I know some of our viewers, I got a couple of texts they're anxious to hear more about. You had your roundtable discussion today, tri-level infrastructure, and I know we're talking some big words to some people that might be watching. So explain what happened today. This is a municipal gathering.
Right.
And the importance of this, and I know you've got lots to share with us here.
Well, basically the way it works is when you're talking about meeting with all the mayors of all the different parts of Sarnia-Lambton, every mayor owns roads, bridges, wastewater systems, sewers, and they have to repair them, they have to maintain them, but they have a very small amount of tax base to do that with, and so they require a provincial and federal investment in order to get those things fixed. And so one of the things that's important is that I know what they're asking for and that I know what funds are available, and I can make those linkages. So by getting together, we talk about, okay, who asked for what, who got what didn't we get that we asked? Why didn't we get it? What do we need next? And come with a plan. And Bob Bailey was there, provincially, okay, and myself, and then our partners in the next ridings over, because we have some overlap in our riding. So Bev Shipley and Monty McNaughton's riding. And to try to make sure that we understand what everybody needs and hear the common concerns. And so there's a whole bunch of actions that come out of that allow me to go back and be their voice in government. When I see funds coming available that fit a need that I've heard about, then I can connect them up, and we can be first out of the gate. And that's important in terms of getting money. We've gotten $60 million from the federal government in the year and a half that I've been in government. So, you know, being there and being aware of what the needs are and being first off the gate is important. Okay,
so let's educate some people on this process, because it sounds pretty simple, but I'm sure everybody involved.
It's the government. It's not simple.
I'm glad you said it, but I mean, it's got to be, complicated and who gets what, and do personalities and conflict, and just like typically anything.
Well, it's not a merit-based process. I mean, there are very complicated government forms. Anyone that's filled out a government form knows that they're just vague and crazy. But once you've filled out the form, most of the funding you have to get municipal, provincial, and government support, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Well, first of all, to try to get them to process your application at the same time and keep those in concert, that's tricky. And then who goes first? Sometimes you'll have the federal government say, well, once the province has prioritized you, then we'll fund you. The municipalities have always prioritized when they bring it first, but they don't know whether to go to the feds first or go to the province first, or how to. And then there's a lot of what I call the game of whack-a-mole, where it's everybody avoiding giving you the money, and you end up having to get everybody in the room together to say it what it is. And so that's part of our strategy, getting all of our municipal, provincial, and federal members here aligned, because then at least we know how to attack in terms of going to get that money from wherever the funding sources are.
So what did you take away from today, and what things were decided or happened that you can share with the public now? Well,
first of all, we celebrated quite a bit of funding that we got for wastewater systems across the county and a number of infrastructure projects, and Canada 150 funding, both for celebrations and for infrastructure. We didn't get everything that we asked for sure, but we did get quite a bit, and I think we got our fair share. In the go forward, what we're seeing is that there are, especially small communities, unable to keep up with just the maintenance, bridges, roads, and they're going to need more support from the government. So that's one thing. The other thing is with this infrastructure bank that the federal government has brought out, this is where they really are taking away $15 billion of money that should be spent on roads and bridges for municipalities, and they're putting it in with $20 billion more of taxpayer money to fund large infrastructure projects over $100 million, where they want to get foreign investment essentially and sell off our airports and our harbors and all this kind of thing for profit. So the taxpayer takes the risk, the investor gets the profit. Well, while I totally am opposed to the infrastructure bank, and so was the Senate, and that's what all this kerfuffle was the last week, when they put this in place, the question is, what kind of projects then could Sarnia-Lambton generate that would be over $100 million that we would have private investment for? And one idea we talked about today was perhaps with the aging population that we have, we want to have care centers that have seniors care, senior living, long-term care, dementia care, palliative care. You know, maybe there's an opportunity with outfits like Steve's and Rosema and some of the other ones that are in long-term care here locally to bring a project like that and get it funded through the infrastructure bank. So that's the kind of ideas that we were
so that sounds like something that you're going to be following through with and those companies.
Yep, and then there's some specific actions. Provincially, we talked about, for example, cemeteries and the lack of maintenance money for cemeteries. And it's a provincially legislated item, so there's requirements on what you have to do, but there's no money to do it. So Bob Bailey took some actions back on that one, and so we spread the work.
Does everybody get along in this? Is this is a good conversation? Does it get passionate and heated? Or,
you know, David,
and I mean that in a nice way.
I'm the most collegial parliamentarian, right? And so the way that I like to work is in that professional, respectful way. And I think I would say that the meetings have always been that way, that I've been at, so I don't know if they were like that formerly, but certainly we have great degrees of cooperation between all the levels, and I think that's what's helped us be so successful here.
I was going to say, it's for the greater good, you know, and everybody, can't we all just get along, that sort of attitude, that mindset.
I think that even for federal government, and I mean, those that watch Question Period would know we're not there yet, but I live in hope that 2/3 of Parliament is actually new people that worked in respectful businesses, and we can make a difference. Right.
I'm just going to go back here again. Jason's telling me we've got some more comments here. Is that Crystal Fach or FACH? I'm sorry, Crystal, if I got your name wrong. Why did you oppose Bill C-16? And Bill C-16 is adding gender identity and expression to the National Human Rights Code. Why would you oppose this?
Actually, if you check the record, the voting record will show that I supported C-16. Now, the reason I supported it was because within the provincial legislation, transgender rights are already protected from discrimination. And in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, they're also protected. And so the federal legislation, while it made a good supportive statement, didn't actually add anything to the way that the courts had been interpreting those situations. So I'm a firm believer that we need to respect everyone, and that's why I voted in favor. So I guess that was false information? Well, there was an article that was run in the Journal, and they had taken a quote from the debate, part of a quote, I would say. The issue that we were talking about was freedom of speech. And so there's 30 million people out of 36 million people in Canada who are faith-based that don't believe the transgendered lifestyle is God's plan. There's another contingent of scientists and medical professionals that are concerned about the health benefits of the lifestyle. There's a 32% or 32 times greater likelihood of committing suicide. There's 80%, I think, have mental health issues. There's a bunch of statistics about that. So the question I was asking in the House was, with this legislation, will those people have the freedom to, speak their opinion in a public space without fear of prosecution under the new legislation? And so the answer was clearly given by the member from St. Catharines, who talked about the hate crime law and what the thresholds are. You actually have to incite violence against somebody in order to be prosecuted underneath that. And so I think it's important. I think everybody needs to be respected. Everybody needs to be able to express their views, and we're not always going to agree, but that was what the question was about, and you can imagine how it was twisted a little bit. And many conservatives voted against, so that was what was said in the article, that the conservatives voted against, but if you check my record. I was for.
Well, and thank you for answering that, because I think that's one of the great things about what we're doing here today is you can reach out directly here with Marilyn. And you don't have to wait just for this opportunity. I mean, I know your door is always open. Summer. She's available. Come and see her, and we'll make sure we put the phone number and everything out at the end of our broadcast. So, Crystal, thank you for that. Jason, do we have any more at this time? Or yeah, okay. My son Jason is in the. He's
doing a great
job. It's the one time he gets to tell Dad what to do. He's the director and producer today. So. Travis Poland, once again, from lampandshield.com. Hello again. Thank you for taking my first question, but I do have a follow-up. Let's imagine a 17-year-old gets caught with 2 marijuana cigarettes. The police drive him or her to the station. What's next? Would you prefer the current laws, which likely result in a criminal record, or would you support decriminalization measures for young adults that would result in a ticket which would not follow a youth around for the rest of his or her life? So I guess there we are back to that.
Yes, you know what, he's brought an interesting point. First of all, the gap between the 17 and 18. So they've got legislation that says over 18, you can possess up to 30 grams, which, I mean, depending on how thickly you roll your joints, it could be 50 to 90 joints.
I love your Cheech and Chong.
So that's a huge amount for personal possession. I would argue that's trafficking materials, not personal possession. But anyway, and then they've got the 12 to 17 limit. But between 17 and 18, they haven't said anything. So I think that is a gap, and I think that gap should be addressed. Now, my preference would always be that young people are not going to have criminal records that are going to, affect them for their life if they make a mistake when they're young. A ticketed offense, similar to open liquor and that sort of thing, I think is adequate. Our court systems are clogged up with these, what I would consider personal possession misdemeanors. And I think the public sentiment is there. So that's what I would support. I got in trouble on my campaign for saying this exact thing when it wasn't yet the Conservative Party line, but now it is the Conservative Party line.
Okay.
And so now I can freely say that.
Fair question. Thanks for that. Travis, thanks for that. Jason, do we have any others at the moment, or we're keeping Jason busy back there as well? Travis, thanks for that. I want to talk about you were talking, about this money and everything that we're discussing today, and I heard water in there, and I just want to throw this out there: fluoride in water. Can we ask you where you are on that?
Well, you know what? I'm in the information gathering part of that, because I'll tell you, first of all, I am a person that has been drinking fluorinated water for 54 years, and I am fine. And everyone that I know that has been doing the same is fine. So I know that there are people that believe it's adverse from a health aspect. I would say that Calgary, the city of Calgary, discontinued fluorination a number of years back, 10 years ago, and are starting to see an increase in dental issues with children, which is why they put it in the water in the first place. Now, having put that out there, I know that some of our folks in the city, I think Andy Bruzowitz is passionate on this issue, had come out with some additional information and some links, and there's a fellow who is intending to visit me in my office and provide me, some perspective, because I think we need to make fact and evidence-based decisions. And like I said, I feel like I'm fine. I've been drinking it for years, so that's the evidence that I have today.
Define fine, Marilyn. You know what I mean?
Well,
no, but you know what I mean. I mean, we can do an X-ray and find a whole bunch of things. And City Council had some conversations about it. They brought in some professionals. I mean, the Dental Association supports it. The Cancer Society kind of supports it. If you go to their website and read it, they say we don't really see any proof of it causing any problems, but we suggest strongly watching it closely.
Yeah, I think you have to be concerned about level, but the other thing is if you don't have enough agents in the water to prevent, fungus or, bacteria, then you can get into some very acute and serious immediate health problems. And so I think there's a balance there, and I'm willing to listen to more
that's
data.
Right. And I'm sure you've probably had people approach you with these conversations.
Good,
already.
and I'm listening for the data, because in my role as critic for science, that's what I'm going to need in order to present something if it ever comes up federally. Usually it's a municipal issue.
Right, yes. Okay, thanks for that. Boy, we could really go on and on here with you. You're fantastic to talk to. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up that maybe I haven't mentioned that you wanted to share with your public?
Just that I'm back for the summer. I'm really looking forward to engaging with people. I think at this stage of the game, I'm extremely concerned about this government and what they're doing in terms of giving money away and accomplishing nothing. We gave out of our $23 billion deficit last year, $12.5 billion went to foreign nations. Okay, we have seniors that can't afford to live. I'm seeing them in my office daily.
Right.
Veterans that are not well supported, and I just don't think that's the right priority. So encourage people, whatever influence they have with their government other than me, who is singing that song on a daily basis. I'd love to hear what you think over the summer and take those views back in the fall.
All right. Canada Day is coming up. Of course, you mentioned that earlier. You're going to be busy for that. We'll see you at Canada Day here.
Yeah, Canada Park in the morning at 11 is the parade, 1 o'clock in Petrolia, and 3 o'clock in Moortown.
Oh, fantastic. She already knows exactly where she's going to be, and you're probably going to be around busy this weekend as
well?
well,
Yeah, there are activities leading up to the week, and of course following the week, and then my own barbecue on July the 13th, 4 o'clock at the Petrolia Farmers Market.
Wonderful. One more thing. You've got to be happy to see Centennial Park reopening as well.
Very happy to see it, and you did a fine job of emceeing that day. And you know, on the 50th anniversary of Centennial Park,
timing, yeah.
on the sesquicentennial,
yeah.
You know, that just seems...
The timing's important.
It was great, and it's going to be a great venue for years to come. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of the bands that are going to be there, and getting out to see it in the summer. And when the grass is seeded, I'll be ever so much happy.
Well, I mean, it's nice to. I mean, it's nice to see it open. I know some people were like, "Well, it wasn't done. Why'd they open it?" You know, I think it's nice to see it open now because we can start to use it again, going for walks and whatever, and we'll see a progress. Like, oh, it looks like this now. Next time you walk down, oh, there's a little more, and it just really gets really exciting to see what's happening there, and it's going to be there.
Well, and people wanted the waterfront to be able to walk around in that park, and so at least on the walkways and everything, it's open again, and they've restored a lot of the great traditional things that were there in the first place. So I think they did a great job.
Fantastic. Phone number, if somebody wants to reach out to you, or what's the best way?
Yeah, 519-383-6600. That's the number to the office, and they will book you in. Otherwise, we're right next to Brownstones, and when I'm here, just drop in.
Perfect. Marilyn Gladu, MP. Thank you so much for your time today. Your MP, Marilyn Gladu, giving us her time here today. We thank you so much for joining in, and continue to share your comments here on our Facebook page, and we'll forward them to Marilyn. I know she'll be checking them out as well, and I'm sure she'll get back to you as well. I'm very grateful for you watching and for Marilyn giving us her time once again. I'm David Burrows, broadcasting for the Video Show Network, and thank you to my son Jason as well for directing and producing here. We'll see you next time.